Whoa, Nelly, let me tell you about aspiration.com. So you can go to the head of the line by going to aspiration.com/TYT, and you don't have to wait on the wait list. There's free access to ATMs all across the world. There's no monthly service fee. I know it just gets better. 10% of their revenue goes to charity. I mean, it doesn't get any more lib than this, and no funding of political campaigns or industry lobbying. So if you were looking for a progressive place to put your money, I think we've got your answer for you, aspiration.com.
Nancy Pelosi was interviewed by Rolling Stone recently, and in it they talked about a lot of topics, but Medicare for All also came up, and her comments on that sound very similar to some of the most cliched right-wing talking points that we have been dealing with on the topic for literally years. So strap yourself in, some of these are rough. Starts off not too bad. When they say Medicare for All, people have to understand this. Medicare for All is not as good a benefit as the Affordable Care Act.
What?
It doesn't have catastrophic coverage, you have to go buy it. It doesn't have dental. It's not as good as the plans that you can buy under the Affordable Care Act. So I say to them, come in with your ideas, but understand that we're either gonna have to improve Medicare for all, including seniors, or else people are not gonna get what they think they're gonna get. And by the way, how's it gonna be paid for?
Okay, so first thing right off the bat, I told you. She's not for single payer, she's not for Medicare for all. The most obvious thing in the world, the only people who deny it is everyone in Washington. She'll tell you, I'm not gonna pay for it, I'm not gonna do it. And she'll say on top, a Republican talking point about how are you gonna pay for it? People will be like, oh no, you progressives. There's no pleasing you. Wait, we want Medicare for all, she doesn't. So why should I agree with her? I don't they're like, what? Hey, you're all on the same team. No, we're not. I know you think teams in Washington, they think teams as in Republicans and Democrats. Who cares what they stand for? Who cares what legislation they push? Policy, principles. That's a joke, right? No, it's not a joke to us. I don't care about Democrats except for policy. Why else would I care about Democrats? They're not my uncle, right?
The most offensive thing about this entire process is that people briefly tried to have a conversation about alternatives to her, even briefly, and didn't just give her the position. That offended me.
Yeah. And they say that.
They say what we were talking about at the time, and like AOC and Rashida and them, the ones that weren't, I believe Rashida was part of that list, weren't immediately bowing down to her. That's just disrespectful. You should really know your role. You should move into the House and then wait 10 to 20 years before ever rocking the boat, even slightly.
And make sure that your role is to disagree with your own policy positions and the ones that got you elected. Okay, so now other parts of that, she said, oh, this is gonna get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Yeah, Affordable Care Act is run through private insurance. It would quote unquote get rid of the Affordable Care Act because you wouldn't need it at all, because you would have complete coverage. Yeah. So now she says, oh, no, it's not as good as the Affordable Care Act. What are you talking about? Have you read the bill? Now, if you're talking about Medicare, okay, then you could say Medicare doesn't have dental, but Medicare for all, the bill that Bernie Sanders introduced and so many others back, and the one that Jayapal is championing in the House, does have dental, does have all that coverage.
Yeah, but how would the Speaker of the House know that?
Golly gee, she'd have to read the bill, I suppose. So, and then, and the other part of it that she's leaving out is, under the Affordable Care Act, you have to buy it. Under the new Medicare for All proposals, no, everyone has it. Everyone has it. Now, it's not that you don't pay for it. You do. You pay through it, the taxes. But to back up Republican talking points as if paying for it is difficult, implying it costs more than the current system, is totally wrong. It's not true. Mitch McConnell does thank you so much for you delivering that talking point, but it's not remotely factual.
That's what's ironic about the approach. She says, it's not as good, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it doesn't have dental, it doesn't have anything else. Well, if it's in there, it has it. You can tout whatever random bill that doesn't have anything and say it's horrible because that's a horrible bill. I don't know who's proposing that. But on top of it, she goes, you can buy this, you can buy that. And ironically, at the end of it all says, how are we gonna pay for Medicare for all? Well, I'm sure a lot of people sit around in their own family discussions and look at their healthcare bill and say, how are we gonna pay for this? So when they ask that on a personal level, but you ask it on a general level because America somehow isn't the greatest nation in the world has ever seen, the biggest, baddest guys that's ever touched a dollar, but we don't have any money for this. We can blow people up with plenty of money.
Yeah.
No one ever says, hey, when Trump says about the invisible airplanes that you literally can't see to your right, no one says, man, that sounds amazing. How do you pay for that airplane that no one can see? It's invisible, but we don't care that it costs $1 billion. It doesn't matter. But now when you want to go to the doctor, how are you gonna pay for that?
And
Totally right.
just in case it's not clear, like when we say that she's advancing the right-wing talking point, you could say, well, she's playing devil's advocate. How are you gonna pay for it? Well, in this next graphic, she goes through a thing about single payer and says administratively it's the simplest thing to do, but to convert to it, $30 trillion. Now, how do you pay for that? So that is her very specifically advancing a very specific right-wing talking point. It's been debunked 100 times on this show, other areas, doesn't matter. To Nancy Pelosi, it's still, we're the first step, still, $30 trillion, doesn't acknowledge that the current system's more expensive. It's like when she was asked about the Green New Deal and calls it the Green Dream. Like we've been talking about it for months. The bill is out there. How do you not know this if you're the speaker? It has to be purposefully condescending to pretend that you don't know this stuff because she is smart. She's far smarter than me, very experienced. She has to have this information. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. She has to have this information. And to not have it or to make us believe that you don't have it now is a purposeful slight on these topics. So first, the Green New Deal, now Medicare for all. She could not be more disconnected from the priorities of not only the most dynamic members of her caucus, but the ones who got them there and will drive the party for the next half century.
We can always point out, everyone has a staff. Congressmen, senators, they all have staff. So if you work for Pelosi and she goes, how are we gonna pay for it? Hey, what does that deal have? Just go, hey, ma'am, can I tell you since I've been researching? Everyone has staff, because you can't know everything.
Right,
Ask your
right.
staff. You don't know? Find out.
So look, we don't just make up that we don't like the Democratic establishment. What would we gain from that? It actually costs us a lot to say that, because then they hate us and there's consequences for that, right? So there's a reason why we say it. So Dianne Feinstein, when asked about Medicare for all during the campaign, said, well, I'm not in favor of a complete takeover of healthcare in America. What? That's a Republican talking point. That's not true. It's not a takeover of the entire healthcare industry. It's a takeover of healthcare insurance. Giant difference. Nobody's taking over doctors, hospitals, etc. So both for Pelosi, who apparently doesn't realize that the current system costs more than Medicare for all, and for Feinstein, I mean, these are the grand poobahs of the Democratic establishment. Are they totally clueless? Like they have no idea what they're talking about? Or do they agree with Republicans? And those are, yes, your only options.
Yeah.
Okay. So if establishment media, you're still confused why we're not in favor of them, I just solved it for you. Wow, that was so hard, right? And so, look, I want to give credit to Pramila Jayapal.
Yep.
Introducing this legislation. She got Pelosi to give hearings to it, and Pelosi, to be fair, talks about, look, we're going to hear it out and people will debate it. Okay, that's good. All right, fine. But that is the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
And so again, if you're establishment media and you can't figure out what we're asking for, because the media keeps saying, well, I mean, she's going to give you hearings, you're going to get to talk about it. Okay, that's great. It's like a tiny, minuscule start. Are we going to vote on it? Are we going to vote on it? And then even like, again, the media that covers this is like, well, I mean, she's in a tough spot because she has some centrist Democrats who don't want to vote for it. Why is that a tough spot? Let's go vote, and they vote no, and we vote yes. Look, I don't think that the Senate's gonna miraculously vote for Medicare for all. I don't think that Trump's gonna miraculously sign it into law, although he did promise it. He did promise universal health care on the campaign trail, okay? We're asking for something incredibly simple. Let's vote, okay? We wanna get the process started so that we're in a position that if progressives win in 2021, that we could actually get it done. So why don't you wanna vote? Well, because you don't want it. So then, on a policy level, you are my opponent.
Yeah.
So everybody watching understands how incredibly simple it is. But I'm telling you right now, this stuff is scandalous in Washington. When you say that, they're like, oh. And why is the press protecting people in power? Like, I get the Democratic leadership being shocked and chagrined, and Jayapal is perfectly friendly to them, and it does the right political things and says, we appreciate the opportunity to be heard out, and I'm the bad cop, okay? So I'm the bad cop who says something simple like, yeah, we wanna vote, we wanna vote. So I get that Pelosi's mad about that, shush, 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 right? Okay, yeah, well, we don't agree, so sad day for you. But the press, what's in it for you? Why are you always like so discombobulated and your feelings are hurt when we say Pelosi's not a progressive? It's obvious, it's in the facts. The progressive position, by the way, the American position, it polls at 70%, is for Medicare for all, Green New Deal, it polls at 80%. I'm not talking about progressives or just Democrats, I'm talking about the country. And when you oppose something that is deeply popular and that is progressive, it might lead people to believe you're not a progressive.
I was just thinking, I mean, those are all good points. I admit it. But I was thinking about how many years people had to wait watching the show to hear you use the term poobah. Like decades. No,
God,
anyway.
they're watching the press.
By the way, so the point I want to make on that, in the Hill article, where they quote Nancy Pelosi and she mentions the $30 trillion without adding that we already understand what that number actually means and what it doesn't mean. Then the next paragraph, the Hill just says, well, you know, the tremendous cost of $30 trillion has been one of the main points of criticism of this proposal. And then does not go on to add any context to that whatsoever.
So if you're wondering why the media kisses Nancy Pelosi's ass, which they most certainly do, it's because if they don't, they're afraid they're gonna lose access.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like, oh, she's the Speaker of the House, I need access. Oh yeah, she's gonna leak things and she's gonna give me stories first. I'm gonna get the story first. Who cares? Like, do you even know that why people cared about that? Because there used to be a morning paper edition, morning edition of the paper, an afternoon edition, and a night edition. And if the kids at the street corner had the scoop and the other papers didn't, you had to wait all the way to the afternoon to get the scoop. Now it's the internet. We all get it in 2 seconds. It's irrelevant who got the scoop, right? But they're still stuck in 1902. Like, hear ye, I got the latest scoop from Nancy Pelosi.
That sounds earlier.
I know. And
It's like, read all about it's the more of the vibe that we're going for.
first of all, that's 100% true. Second of all, I don't know why the kid selling papers is a pirate. Hear ye. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.